Okay, so one of the greatest contributors to Star Trek, arguably the guy who made Trek what it is today, Nicholas Meyer, he said this thing once that becomes more and more true as the franchise gets older. This is a review of Star Trek Lower Decks, by the way. So Nick Meyer said something along the lines of that the Star Trek that Gene Roddenberry created became a bottle, and that each subsequent contributor poured their own vintage of wine into that bottle. The flavors of each vintage are different, but the bottle stays the same. Because of all the different flavors that Roddenberry put into the bottle initially, and because of all the subsequent vintages that have gone into the bottle since the 1960s, Star Trek is different to each person who watches it. Some who watch Star Trek will see a show filled with jokes and fun and humor. Others will see a vast soap opera that happens to be set in space. Others still will see a secular Aesop's Fables. And some, less and less nowadays, will see Trek as actual science fiction. Others will see ridiculous pajamas and scientifically implausible aliens somehow magically shaped like humans, and the 1960s clunky charm of golden age sci-fi. So what flavor is Star Trek Lower Decks? What vintage is it? I don't know. I can say up front that I don't like it. One might even say that I hate it. But let me expand on that. To my mind, and remember this is just a personal opinion, Lower Decks isn't very good at being Star Trek. Instead, it is a joke delivery system in the style of Rick and Morty or Family Guy, not a chapter in a great science fiction franchise.
Man, I would kill to work on the deflector dish. Most of my day is spent repairing food replicators.
They really break that often?
Only when you get food in them.
Instead of adding to the science fiction ethos of Trek, Lower Decks is more interested in deconstructing Trek tropes. Many of you no doubt liked it, or even loved it, but I did not. I'll be the first to admit that it is slickly produced. The production and performances did a great job in the execution of it. One can even call it a love letter to Star Trek. But it isn't for me.
You know it, nothing like a cold beer after a smooth second contact.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah!
Look, Lower Decks does some things well. It spends its entire runtime questioning every single Star Trek trope there ever was. But it pokes holes in those tropes at such a breakneck pace that the trope in question turns into a floppy pile on the floor, never to be used again. From malicious energy beings
Supplicate yourselves!
Ah, what the heck? Whoa, it's one of those trans-dimensional energy creatures.
to shipwide sicknesses
So, where are you quartered?
Deck 9, by the squash courts?
to cultural misunderstandings
Hey, sorry about the whole invading your ship thing, very uncrystal-like of us.
to computers gaining sentience.
But I didn't get smarter. It broke, and I peed my pants, so I hid down here and told you guys I had been attacked so you wouldn't feel let down.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with this.
On and on and on. It does this well, if you like to see tropes lampooned. But even though I would agree that a piece of art should stand up to questioning and to testing, what bothers me is that Lower Decks never stops to explain the why of its war against the Trek form. Compare that to a series like Deep Space Nine, where Roddenberry's utopian vision gets questioned slowly, cleverly sidestepping Roddenberry's rules for Star Trek characters, exploring the ideas that Trek assumes that the audience must accept blindly.
Nobody leaves paradise. Everyone should want to be in the Federation. Hell, you even want the Cardassians to join.
DS9 is interested in understanding that vision, in looking for the practical utility of a utopian future. Lower Decks, on the other hand, is almost cynically corporate about its questioning, using its takedown of Trek form instead as a means to primarily tell self-referential jokes. DS9 is a stress test. Lower Decks is a joke fest.
If you really have a shuttle here, you must have a code.
Oh, my code, yes. It's, right? Give me a profit!
But more than that, the constant self-referencing for the sake of self-referencing is the backbone to Star Trek Lower Decks. Nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia. It used to be that Discovery was the king of this behavior. But Lower Decks is self-referencing on steroids. It's like the writers took a copy of the Star Trek Encyclopedia, blended it up into a franchise puree, and poured it into that bottle that Gene created. But why? What does Star Trek Lower Decks provide in its takedown of Trek form besides humor? What does it illuminate? That Star Trek is ridiculous? Will this style of navel-gazing, will it make future Trek stronger? Surely filmmakers and creatives can be more constructive than this, right?
Tractor beam.
We don't have a tractor beam.
You left space dock without a tractor beam.
It won't be installed until Tuesday.
As it stands, Lower Decks is the Captain Harriman of the Star Trek franchise. Are we supposed to consider this show canon? Is there an actual starship in the fleet filled with an entire crew of incompetent people?
Forward! I love honor! I demand honor!
Is there some poor exocomp floating through space right now, marooned for all eternity?
Help!
Do Star Trek characters always exhibit a kind of prejudice against imaginary races?
Or maybe it's just because all Klingon names sound the same, like they all have an apostrophe for some reason.
Yes, that's it!
Ferengi are the most untrustworthy race in the galaxy. He probably just wants to lure us over there so he can mug us.
Are crew members always this violent toward each other?
I thought you were a rogue holodeck character. Then, because of the way you were lurking around all day, I thought you were a Breen infiltrator.
And why are we still making fun of U.S. Southeastern accents?
I can't let it eat him.
She's an herbivore. She's just gumming on him to suckle out some moisture.
Oh!
I'm Shimpo. I was supposed to be played by Boimler.
Okay, come on. I don't sound like that.
I love my captain, and I don't want to be doing this.
It's the 21st century. Please stop doing that. Grow up. What is it about the violence or the prejudice or the incompetence that we see in Lower Decks that sets it particularly at odds with the rest of the franchise? Hasn't Trek been all of those things before? Well, as ridiculous as Star Trek can get, violence has always been relegated to villains or dramatically tense situations. It's not normally seen between regular Starfleet characters, as a matter of course. And it's never usually played for laughs. Justifications range from saving the ship.
Well, I don't think that he... I'm sorry, Doctor. I have no time to discuss this logically.
To being under the influence of some malicious energy being.
It's taking too long. We should have been there by now. He is manipulating you.
Gary, forgive me.
Or to just having aspirations of becoming a god, and a Starfleet character gets in the way. In Lower Decks, it's just supposed to be funny.
Look, just hand me the face. Ow! Oh my God, you made me stun you. I can't feel my hand. Oh God, what have I done?
Gene Roddenberry mandated that the future in Star Trek be free of prejudice, that racism was something that we solved before the 23rd century. But Trek has explored prejudice before, explored its origins, and looked at potential solutions to prejudice.
It is obvious to the most simple-minded that Lokai is of an inferior breed.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
As a way to understand the issue in our own contemporary day and time.
You can deny me all you want, but you cannot deny Ben Sisko exists. That future, that space station, all those people, they exist in here.
Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, was ostensibly about the fall of the Soviet Union, and about the United States coming to terms with its deadly rivalry with the Russians, and its addiction to the military-industrial complex.
Don't believe them. Don't trust them. They are dying. Let them die.
In the film, Kirk is given the prejudice. He becomes our vessel for understanding the issue.
I've never trusted Klingons. And I never will. I've never been able to forgive them for the death of my boy.
This makes sense because of Kirk's own history of fighting Klingons and because his son was murdered by Klingons. It is a very serious affair.
Those words were spoken by me.
We see it in the Next Generation episode Family, where Picard expresses his humiliation from his experience with the Borg.
You don't know, Robert. You don't know. They took everything I was. They used me to kill and to destroy, and I couldn't stop them.
That humiliation becomes anger when the Borg try to attack Earth in Star Trek First Contact.
I will make them pay for what they've done.
We see it too in the original series episode Balance of Terror.
Leave any bigotry in your quarters. There's no room for it on the bridge. Do I make myself clear?
You do so.
where bigotry is confronted head-on as a matter of fact. But in Lower Decks, racist-style comments are played for laughs.
At least someone around here appreciates rank.
Don't listen to her. She's just a cat in a coat.
And let's discuss the incompetence we see in the characters of Lower Decks. Incompetence is the opposite of Starfleet ethos. Starfleet characters typically know what they're doing. That is the warm comfort food of Trek, that these competent, admirable scientists and leaders are the best of the best. And while it is valid to ask what's happening with lower-ranking crew members on a ship, Lower Decks seems to say that the reason they are Lower Decks crew members to begin with is because there's something wrong with them. And because of that, maybe they don't belong in Starfleet.
This would be so much easier if I were smarter. And then I was like, wait, that computer's smart. Maybe it can make me smart. What?
There is nothing wrong with discussing lower-ranking characters. The Next Generation tackled this before, specifically in the episode also called Lower Decks. In that episode, we get a competent lower-ranked crew that wants to belong, that belongs as a matter of merit, because of hard work, and because of a willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. The animated Lower Decks spinoff shows us that most people hate their jobs, that it's okay to cut corners because that job is dull. The two main characters' arcs have lessons surrounding this issue. They do come around in their own way, but mostly, characters screw up just for laughs. It is such a jarring disconnect between the ethos of competence and an ethos of incompetence. Lower Decks shares some of these qualities with its cousins, Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard, too.
I really gotta think of something cool to say when we're going to warp. Something like, it's warp time. What do you think of that? Is that good for you?
Hit it was Captain Parks.
Yeah, but you could put your own spin on it, like, hit it!
I will take it under advisement.
All three of these shows, alongside their Kelvin timeline film brethren, punch hard on the nostalgia button for the sake of nostalgia.
I ripped my shirt again.
How'd it go?
Are more casual towards violence, and tend to eschew expertise in favor of incompetent decisions. Discovery and Picard are soap opera-style vintages, being apparently corporately retooled to chase Marvel and Star Wars sensibilities. Lower Decks looks to be a Rick and Morty clone wearing Star Trek's recently flayed skin. All three shows expressly lack quality science fiction as an ingredient. But where Discovery, Picard, and the Kelvin films at least attempt dramatic gravity, Lower Decks has completely abandoned it. Of course, for each criticism I've listed here, you can and will find a counterpoint. Hasn't Trek done this or that before? Hasn't it been violent? Hasn't it been incompetent?
I'm very, very sorry, sir. It's just that I had a very important communique, which...
I don't want to hear it.
Hasn't it been prejudiced?
Your world of starship captains doesn't admit women.
Hasn't it even hit the revered Captain Kirk in the head with a tribble just for the fun of it? Yeah, it has. The franchise is over 50 years old. It's done everything. But it isn't normal, and it typically isn't done solely for a laugh. Perhaps the real issue is the sheer scale and concentration of these subversions as they appear in Lower Decks. And let's talk about the jokes for a moment. What's wrong with the franchise having a laugh at itself? Why can't we let our hair down? There's nothing wrong with poking fun at Star Trek.
Hey, don't open that! It's an alien planet! Is there air? You don't know!
There's a long line of parodies and skits that do exactly what Lower Decks does.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
What kind of ship is that, Spock?
Fascinating, Captain. It would appear to be an early gas combustion vehicle, at least 200 or 300 years old.
This outside commentary shows us the ridiculousness of Trek tropes, and pries open the Trek formula so that we can see what's working and what isn't.
The creatures are composed of completely indigestible toxins.
The difference is that the commentary comes usually from outside the franchise.
You know, I've never noticed the little lever I've been pushing. It's only about 2/3 of the way up. I actually can give her more. That's great, Scotty.
In this, Trek is allowed to continue doing what it needs to do to stay in character, so to speak, absorbing the lesson, but feigning ignorance in order to continue the validity of its internal world building.
Wait, so you can eat anything?
I can eat many things.
Can you eat this napkin?
The most poignant and important of that commentary came recently from an episode of Black Mirror, USS Callister.
I know the crystal's capabilities, and I will die
before I give it up.
I gave you a chance, Fallback. Showed you mercy. Reflect on that while you can. Close comes.
A multifaceted story speaking indirectly about the state of the Trek franchise.
What happened?
It was fantastically executed.
The mod's gone.
But perhaps we've reached a stage in the franchise's development where that is no longer happening. Perhaps, with Lower Decks, outside commentary isn't necessary because the commentary about Trek is coming from inside the franchise. And, unlike commentary from the outside, it is played solely for comedy at the expense of everything else.
I am Vindicta, vengeance personified. At last, free man, I will bathe in your blood.
Oh boy. Which breaks the validity of Trek's own internal world building in a big way. Does that mean that Trek can no longer take itself seriously? That the formula and the science fiction of it is so played out that there's nothing left to do but turn on itself? Maybe so. Maybe not. Other, smaller franchises have collapsed inward with less prodding.
What the hell? What did you do to my program?
I made it into an awesome movie.
I'm gonna work some out.
As commentary goes, what Lower Decks offers is hollow as compared to the likes of Black Mirror. That goes for the self-referential, nostalgia-loving nature of Discovery and Picard, too. It's odd that the outside commentary currently being produced would be more sophisticated than what is actually being made inside the franchise. If we were to consider Black Mirror's USS Callister as a member of the franchise family, so to speak, then it stands as the finest addition to Trek in the last 20 years. Star Trek hasn't been what it used to be for a while now. And that's the truth. You may like this new stuff. You may even love it, and that's okay. Please continue loving it. Please continue watching it and enjoying it. But for me, well, I'm not sure Star Trek has ever been this dead before. It's like a zombie. Its corpse is animated, up and walking around, but there doesn't seem to be any life inside. The vintage being poured in the bottle is soapy and melodramatic and has a joke delivery system now, but it lacks the distinct flavor that we get with science fiction, and it lacks the wonder and surprise and hope we have concerning the direction of future human evolution. It lacks substance. The innovations being introduced are not compelling enough on their own. It's now a franchise for the sake of franchise. Perhaps one day a new vintage will be poured into the bottle. Something more savory, something interesting, something more sci-fi. Something worth waiting for. Look, some of you might be upset about this video, and that's okay. But Trexpertise will continue to make content. We'll continue to put videos out, especially about Star Trek. It's just that concerning Lower Decks, we could find nothing, absolutely nothing substantive or constructive to say, except for this. So, keep an eye out on this space. More to come. If you'd like more criticism or discussion about Abrams, Kurtzman era Trek, I recommend these videos right here. At least I think they're right there. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be watching The Mandalorian. Save us, Jon Favreau. You're our only hope.
遠い将来を考えてみようよ。